What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? It's Michael here, bringing you the latest Fallout 4 build from FudgeMuppet. You've probably realized we make heaps of Fallout 4 builds and we're not going to be stopping anytime soon, so be sure to subscribe for more. We're also going to be covering heaps of the DLC content and making builds with DLC material. As the title says, this build is the Commando, and it's one of the highest, if not the most requested build on our channel. If you're following us on Snapchat, you may have seen it already, and on that note, please do follow us on Snapchat if you're interested in seeing our builds before anyone else. Anyways, like I was saying, some of you already know how this character plays, but for the majority who don't, this build is going to give you a really cinematic elite soldier experience. The soldier will use stealth to get the drop on targets, wielding an assault rifle to take them out from a distance. He's also equipped with a combat knife if he wants to get up close to silently take out his enemies. The assault rifle and the combat knife can also be used in open combat, as can explosives alongside one of the soldier's favorite close range assault weapons, the plasma thrower. Power armor can also be used for big planned attacks, and a silenced Gauss rifle will be carried to quietly take out large targets from a hiding spot. As you'd assume, this character can dish out a ton of damage, but at the same time he's very stealthy and tactical, and will excel at multiple combat methods and environmental circumstances. His training as a soldier has been extensive, and he's able to run and gun, fight from cover, fight using stealth, and dominate with frontal firepower. We've gone for a very Spec Ops feel for this character. He's meant to be a soldier that can do just about anything. As always, remember to check the description box to use the timestamps we've made to help you navigate throughout this build. If you want to skip something or go back to a section to remember information, these links are definitely useful. And now let's dive into the Commando's backstory. The Commando was born in Quincy and grew up in a middle-income family who did their best to raise him as a warm-hearted child. He was taught from a young age to be generous to others so that others would be kind to him, and he was encouraged to give many activities a try. Throughout primary school, the Commando was a talented sportsman and also gave the highly intellectual kids a run for their money. While one would expect that a smart and athletic child would enjoy his junior schooling, this ended up not being the case. The Commando may have had many talents, but speaking confidently and fitting in with the rest of the children were not among them. The Commando struggled to stick up for himself and was bullied quite often from about halfway through his early schooling till the end. By the time he'd become a teenager and progressed into his senior years, the Commando was a very different person. He immediately started to bully others so that he wouldn't end up on the bottom of the food chain, and started hanging out with the rougher, more simplistic crowds. In doing this, he often found himself surrounded by ditzy, shallow girls and spent much of his adolescence fooling around with them. He was definitely a bit of a player, and he succeeded with women without any sort of charisma. He was attractive to these girls because of how he acted, how he didn't care, how he did what he wanted without consideration of what other people wanted or thought. He was a real sleaze, and occasionally experimented with different kinds of drugs. His parents knew he was falling off track, however they didn't think they could do anything to help him. He simply wouldn't listen to their pleas. Now, while one might assume that the Commando would have been failing at school, he was actually doing quite well. He could breeze through school with decent grades due to his natural smarts, even though he spent most of his time getting up to no good. Finishing his schooling, the Commando's parents had become fed up with his lifestyle and told him to join the military to learn some discipline or move out. He could only stay if he would regularly help around the house and aspire towards a more mature way of life. The Commando was not happy about this, and he wasn't going to join the military, so he moved out. He moved into a small apartment in Quincy that he wanted some of his friends to stay in. However, coincidentally enough, the Commando ended up joining the military after all. This was, of course, not by choice. He had been drafted into the military and would serve as a soldier to help fight in the intensifying war. He was still a young man, however he was old enough to serve, and that's exactly what he had to do. After only a few months in the military, the Commando had been broken down, beaten, and worked into shape both mentally and physically. With the negative influence of his previous friends removed from his life, he was forced to associate with those who led nobler lives, people who believed in committing to a cause greater than themselves. As the Commando sharpened up and began to see the world in a new light, he embraced the military lifestyle he'd been forced into and decided to take his mind off any destructive thoughts by training as hard as he could and learning as much as possible. It wasn't long before the Commando started outperforming all the soldiers around him, and over time his skills became more and more recognized. He was assigned to different squads with more talented individuals. The Commando grew an incredible amount mentally in only a few years, resenting his old outlook on life and learning many new abilities from the multiple people he became friends with. After a few more years, he was tough as nails, proficient in stealth, at using sniper rifles, explosives, shotguns, almost any handheld military weapon under the sun, really. Later on during his career, he was assigned to a Spec Ops task force, and during this time his skills and mindset were developed even further. He mastered not only various forms of combat, but also many different terrains. It wasn't uncommon for him to have to survive for weeks in scarce and unwelcoming places. Years were spent fighting in the most unthinkable of circumstances, but eventually the Commando's service came to an end, and he decided to head back to Quincy to make things right with his family. His parents were happy to see him, and couldn't be happier that he was not only alive, but now a man of honor and respect. The Commando was invited to go see his old friends at a local bar, and out of curiosity he accepted. He didn't really have anyone else to talk to, and if they were still dropkicks, he'd easily be able to break contact with them forever. To his surprise, they were nowhere near as bad as they once were, and they seemed to have cleaned up their act as well. Not to the same degree he had, but they were still much more sensible than they used to be. At this gathering, the Commando also met one of his old girlfriends, and she too had turned her life around for the better. She was working at a legal firm, and after getting along well, the two began to date and eventually married. They had a child named Sean and settled down in their very own home. Things were going well for the soldier as he found civilian life a lot more enticing than he expected. However, with the bombs beginning to fall, he was rushed into Vault 111 and thrown back into a life of violence and scarcity shortly after. Now it's time to talk about motives and factions. As always, I'd like to warn you that I'm talking about what factions we're joining and why, so if this sounds like something you'd want to avoid, skip this section using the timestamps. Like all FudgeMuppet builds, big faction and quest storylines will be kept quite vague. The Commando will enter the wasteland distressed over what has happened. However, his experience as an elite soldier in the military has taught him how to control his emotions and focus on whatever he decides his objective to be. Without any orders to follow, the Commando decides to seek out Sean, and on the way he will discover the Brotherhood of Steel, a faction he soon becomes very fond of. The Brotherhood provide him with the resources and firepower that he needs, as well as the camaraderie he's become accustomed to in the military. He also strongly believes in keeping humanity pure, although he doesn't despise synths as much as he does super mutants and ghouls. With synths, he's slightly more sympathetic, however he can understand the need to get rid of them. The Commando had developed a sense of satisfaction being part of a cause greater than himself, and the Brotherhood of Steel will provide him with a feeling of importance that no other faction possibly could. The Commando will be honorable within the wasteland and help those in need, including the Minutemen when he has time. He will always make the traditionally moral choices and show great character as much as possible. However, one rule he will always follow is complete the objective at all costs. This means if you want to do a few harsh things during your playthrough, you can. You just need very strong justification. Overall, the Commando will strive to uphold order, honor, and peace within the Commonwealth and ensure that technological advancement will not lead to humanity's downfall once again. The Commando will battle into the wasteland with 6 strength, 1 perception, 5 endurance, 1 charisma, 6 intelligence, 7 agility, and 2 luck. You're going to be using the special book in Sanctuary on perception, and after getting the perception bobblehead shortly after, you'll have 3 perception. This gives the Commando access to riflemen and also makes him closer to getting the Demolition Expert perk. You'll want to collect every special bobblehead as you progress throughout the game, and do keep in mind that we have links in the description showing you how to get these bobbleheads and how to get the special book. 6 strength represents the brawnier build of the Commando and will allow him to cause plenty of damage with melee and carry plenty of gear. 5 endurance conveys his sturdy nature and also of course keeps him alive. 6 intelligence will help him level faster and accentuates the fact that he's always been a tactical thinker and gifted intellectually, and 7 agility has been chosen for perks for stealth and also VATS usage. High agility represents the speed and coordination of the Commando on the battlefield. 1 perception represents the side effects of the Vault 111 technology, however over time his perception will be restored to what it used to be. Luck, obviously, has never been a major part of the Commando's life or beliefs. Okay, now it's time to explore the perk choices of the Commando between level 1 and level 50. Remember that these builds can obviously be changed to suit your preference, however this is what we wanted for our ultimate soldier build. Starting off, we're going to go straight into Rifleman to begin blasting our enemies away with 20% more non-automatic rifle damage, and then the damage will keep coming with the first rank of Big Leagues, giving us 20% more melee damage for smacking, slicing, and stabbing. At level 4, the Commando gets Armor to start customizing his armor, and then at level 5 and 6, he starts changing things up with 2 ranks of Sneak. And now will be 30% harder to detect while sneaking and will no longer set off floor-based traps. As always, I must warn you that this doesn't include mines just yet. Next up is the infamous Ninja perk, and with the first rank of this, you'll be able to cause 2.5 times as much normal damage with your ranged sneak attacks, and 4 times as much normal damage with melee sneak attacks. At level 8, we get Gun Nut to start upgrading our rifles, moving towards getting suppressors, and then at level 9, we're able to get Rifleman 2. Now rifles will do 40% more damage, and they'll ignore 15% of target armor. We like to roleplay that the Commando is using special armor-piercing bullets. Finally, at level 10, we follow the damage pattern and follow up Rifleman again with Big Leagues, now making the Commando unleash 40% additional melee damage and gain a chance to disarm his opponents. At level 11, it's time to get our hands on the Medic perk, and this will give you much better use of stim packs and Radaway, and overall simply helps the Commando stay alive. It also represents the whole idea that he's a soldier who can do anything. Besides being efficient in all kinds of combat, he's also knowledgeable when it comes to first aid and administering medicine. At the first rank, stim packs will restore 40% of max HP, and Radaway will remove 40% of max potential radiation. Next, the Commando picks up the third rank of Sneak, allowing him to no longer trigger enemy mines and be 40% harder to detect while sneaking, and after this we're getting the second rank of Gun Nut. This rank will allow you to improve your guns even more, and notably you'll be able to access many suppressor modifications to make your rifles silent. We're then going to be getting the Mr. Sandman perk, and this goes beautifully with Ninja. At the first rank, Mr. Sandman will give you a throat-slitting animation which you can use on sleeping targets to kill them instantly, and most importantly, it will make your silenced weapons do an additional 15% sneak attack damage. At level 15, we're getting the second rank of Armor to keep making upgrades to our apparel, and following this, we're going with Aqua Boy. Aqua Boy is another one of those perks that fit in with the versatile soldier concept of this build, as it displays that he's proficient at using water to his advantage in missions. At rank 1, the Commando will no longer take radiation damage from swimming, and he'll be able to breathe underwater. Then over the next 2 levels, we're going to double dip in Scrounger, allowing us to find more ammunition around the Commonwealth than ever before. Remember, this allows you to find more fusion cores, which is great if you decide you want to use power armor frequently. At level 19, we get Rifleman 3 to do 60% more rifle damage and also ignore 20% of target armor, and then at level 20, we're getting Big Leagues 3 to cause 60% more melee damage and have an increased chance of disarming our enemies. At level 21, we're getting the second rank of Medic, and this will be the final rank of Medic the Commando gets. We found that other perk investments were more worth it for this build than the third and fourth ranks. At rank 2, stim packs will restore 60% of your max HP, and Radaway will remove 60% of your max potential radiation. We're then getting the second rank of Mr. Sandman to cause 30% more sneak attack damage with silenced weapons, and this will be followed by the Science perk. 2 ranks in fact, over levels 23 and 24. Science is going to be used to create your plasma thrower and also get the most out of your Gauss rifle, which mainly requires Gun Nut. We're then getting the third rank of Gun Nut to continue upgrading our guns, and then at level 26 we're getting Sneak rank 4. This will make the Commando 50% harder to detect in stealth mode and also makes running no longer negatively impact stealth. Next up, we have the second rank of Ninja, making ranged sneak attacks do 3 times as much normal damage, and melee sneak attacks do 5 times as much. We're then doubling up on perception investments over levels 28 and 29, and alongside the perception bobblehead and the special book, this will give us access to the Demolition Expert perk. This perk will be picked at level 30 and level 31. With 2 ranks of Demolition Expert, the Commando will cause 50% more explosives damage and gain a throwing arc for grenades. He'll also be able to craft certain explosives at any chemistry station. We're then going with Rifleman 4, and at this rank the Rifleman perk gains 3 effects. Rifles will cause 80% more damage, they'll ignore 25% of a target's armor, and they'll have a slight chance of crippling a limb. Our list of high damage perks continues next with the third rank of Ninja. This rank makes ranged sneak attacks do 3.5 times as much normal damage, and very impressively, it makes melee sneak attacks do 10 times as much normal damage. This perk is going to make stealth a highly viable playstyle of the Commando, as he'll be able to kill off enemies effortlessly without being detected. Sneak damage is further improved with the third rank of Mr. Sandman. At this rank, your silenced weapons will cause a massive 50% additional sneak attack damage, and this goes perfectly with the 3.5 times as much normal range damage you're receiving from Ninja. This is one of the reasons why using suppressors is a great idea, alongside the fact that it silences your gun, of course. At level 35, we're getting the third rank of Science to gain access to better modifications, and then at level 36, we're getting the second rank of Aqua Boy. This will allow the Commando to use water to be stealthy, as it will make him totally undetectable while submerged. This is really fun while using Pikmin's Blade. Next is Armor 3 to gain access to better armor mods, and following this is the 5th and final rank of Sneak. This rank ensures that distant enemies lose track of you when you engage stealth mode, which is useful if you need to escape and approach a situation from a different angle. Perhaps you try to knife your way through a building but get caught in the process, but with this perk you can run away, sneak, become hidden again, and then ambush the place with your plasma thrower. Next, we're doing a double dip again, which is Scott's favorite phrase that he forced me to use in this video, and we're going to be double dipping in the Action Boy perk. With 2 ranks of Action Boy, action points will regenerate 50% faster, making sprinting easier if you want to run and gun, and also allowing for plenty of VATS usage. VATS will be used to target and cripple specific enemy body parts. At level 41 and 42, it's time to finish off all the ranks of big leagues, and with rank 4, you'll be able to hit multiple enemies in one swipe. However, this isn't super useful for the Commando as he is using a very short melee weapon. The main use you get from Big Leagues 4 is of course the 80% extra melee damage, which becomes 100% with the 5th rank. At the 5th rank, you'll also gain a chance to cripple your opponent or grand slam their head clean off with a knife. At levels 43 and 44, we're double dipping in Demolition Expert, and with the 3rd and 4th rank, we're going to gain some new benefits. Explosives will now deal double damage and affect a larger area, and you can now shoot mines and grenades in VATS to make them explode for double damage too. This adds even more incentive to use VATS as a Commando, as you'll be able to shoot enemy grenades milliseconds after they've been thrown, which then will cause them to explode, killing everyone around in one big cinematic action movie moment. We're then getting Scrounger 3 and Scrounger 4, and this will help us find even more ammunition around the Commonwealth. Remember that rank 4 of Scrounger actually gives you a 5% chance of finding a free magazine of ammo whenever you reload an empty gun. At level 47, we're getting the final rank of Gun Nut to fully max out our guns in regards to customization options, and then we're getting the final rank of Science to do the same thing for energy weapons and also to give us a lot of freedom when working with power armor. Finally, at level 49, we're getting the final rank of Armorer to make sure we're as protected as possible, and then at level 50, we're finishing where we started with even more non-automatic rifle damage. With the 5th rank of Rifleman, the Commando will do double damage with rifles, ignore 30% of target armor, and have a slightly higher chance of crippling an enemy's limb. The endgame special stats after finding all the special bobbleheads and not including gear are going to be 7 strength, 5 perception, 6 endurance, 2 charisma, 7 intelligence, 8 agility, and 3 luck. When it comes to gear, the Commando is going to use quite a variety as he levels up during the game. Gear will be explained as early game, mid game, and end game, and remember that this refers to what level the build is and not where you are in the main storyline. I won't be discussing explosives in each section, but just remember to always craft, carry, and when appropriate, use whatever grenades and mines you can. Because of the versatile playstyles of this build, we're also not going to explain what modifications to choose. Pick whatever mods you think benefit the way you play the most. Finally, you can also get Ballistic Weave if you want to be a bit of a double agent. There's a video in the description about how to get it. Now let's discuss early game gear. At the start of the game, you'll want to stay in your vault suit until you find yourself a pair of military or preferably army fatigues. You can get this pretty quickly and you'll want to wear this in place of your vault suit. Army fatigues will give you an additional point of agility and strength. Over the top of this, you'll want to wear leather and metal pieces, whatever you can find that looks the most aesthetic and offers decent protection. In terms of weapons, you're going to have 3 different categories. The first is ranged, the second is melee, and the third is what we're calling assault. Assault is basically for closer ranged firepower. So with early game ranged weapons, you're going to want to carry a few types of rifles. You'll want a pipe rifle, a hunting rifle, and a laser rifle. Most likely Righteous Authority once you get it. Customize these as much as you can for different purposes, and make sure that at all times at least one of your rifles is silenced. In regards to melee weapons, there's not really a lot of choice at the start of the game, so you should just use whatever you can find. Switchblades fit in quite well. Finally, in regards to assault weaponry, we recommend using the double barrel shotgun for some short range slaughter. Again, don't forget to use explosives. With the Commando's mid-game gear, he's going to keep his army fatigues on, but wear combat armor over the top. You're going to want to progressively build this armor up to be a full set of heavy combat armor, but for the time being normal or sturdy is fine. You'll want to upgrade this combat armor to the best of your abilities and also make sure that you make it shadowed. This will improve your stealth in dark areas, which fits in with the stealthy methods this build will often use, and it also gives the Commando a more professional badass aesthetic. The Commando's arsenal at this point in the game can still include early game rifles for ranged weapons, however I recommend using a combat rifle too. Again, make sure at least one of your rifles is silenced. In terms of your melee weapons, you're going to want to use Pikmin's Blade, and this legendary combat knife will be your main melee weapon for the entire game. Not only is it highly powerful, but it also fits in with the military aesthetic for this build, especially if you're feeling like creating some Rambo moments. There's a guide on how to get it in the description. Finally, for assault-based weapons, you're going to want to switch out that double-barrel shotgun for a combat shotgun. Now let's take a look at endgame gear. By now at the higher levels, the Commando will definitely want to have collected a full set of heavy combat armor and upgraded it to be shadowed and have the best mods possible. Army fatigues will of course still be worn underneath. In terms of weaponry, you're going to want to use an assault rifle and a Gauss rifle and make sure they're both silenced. All weapons we've put in the ranged category should be silenced if possible, even in the earlier stages. These weapons will both be great against tough enemies, especially if you're hidden and shooting them from a distance, taking advantage of the sneak attack multipliers. Pikmin's Blade will still be your main melee choice, but for your assault weapon, it's going to be a complete change. A combat shotgun could still be kept laying around, but what you're going to want is the plasma thrower. You can craft this using the science perk, and it causes a lot more damage than a standard flamer. The plasma thrower will be your go-to weapon when fighting close up against hordes of challenging enemies, and the green flame is just sensational, especially with the black combat armor. The Commando is definitely someone who will take companions with him for combat missions. When he's sneaking though, he prefers to be alone. So your companion can be anyone you deem to have a good sense of morals and honor. People like Paladin Dance and Preston Garvey work well, and regardless of whether or not you want to work with Preston, you should max his affinity as soon as you can to get his perk called United We Stand. This will give the Commando plus 20 damage resistance and more importantly make him cause 20% more damage when facing 3 or more enemies in combat. If you want to choose a fruitier companion to permanently have, then go ahead, but make sure they fit into the mindset and faction choices of this build. Maybe consider that this character doesn't have locksmith or hacker before you make a choice, although ultimately it doesn't matter. Any romance is up to you. When it comes to settlements, the Commando simply isn't interested. He's not the kind of guy that finds construction and decorating interesting, and if he needs accommodation, he will stay on the Pridwin. If you want to build settlements and design things, you can, but our Commando leaves that kind of work to the settlers. And that finishes off one of the most highly requested FudgeMuppet builds of all time, the Commando. I want to thank you all for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, please click the like button, and if you didn't like it, please click the dislike button. Definitely subscribe if you want more Fallout 4 builds, Fallout 4 DLC content, and some Elder Scrolls content. Remember to follow our Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The links are all in the description below. My name is Michael, this was the Commando, and I look forward to nerding out with you all again very soon.